Welcome everybody to another In the Room with Garvin and George. Except for Garvin wasn't. He was up a ladder a short time ago, so we had to bring him back into the safety and the security of the room without being sort of lost on some kind of ladder out there at the moment. So just going up the ladder. That's an interesting sort of concept.
Oh, that's good.
Climbing the ladders to success, even though you may be going up there and kind of winging it a little bit, trying to see what's happening. So we're having an interesting week this week. I'm preparing to go to Canada and to go away. We've just now set up a trip to Vancouver on a road trip there, which is quite nice. And I'm just getting loads of rolls of film to start shooting some interesting landscapes and whatever, just to see. And it was just funny. That thing was that I was sort of thinking as I was going to go to Canada that wouldn't it be nice to see my brother? And without sort of passing it on to my son, he decided, Dad, do you fancy going to Vancouver for a week? And I went, yeah, of course I will. haven't had a chance to get there. Haven't had a chance to go through the Rockies and see those lovely landscapes. So apparently it's nearly a 10-hour journey. So we'll share that trip between us of 5 hours of driving or whatever, or 5 blocks of 2 hours of driving or something. We'll see how it goes. But it'll give me a nice chance to chat with my son for that journey and just, have a good chinwag about things and try and save the world as it goes into wherever it's going into. But really just having the company is going to be the most exciting part of that. And I think we were talking about that with the way things are going for the films. It's actually about the company that we're keeping. I think that's something we were talking about yesterday, company.
In the Company of Wolves. I think that's a film I wrote.
Wolves, yeah. That was a really good one because basically that was about some guy who had all his prejudices and basically because he actually got to meet the people, suddenly changed his worldview, which I think is also an interesting concept. So through the Film Production Academy, we hope to get people to change their worldview through making films. The art
Actually, their worldview. Yeah, as you said, I was up a ladder not 10 minutes ago when you rang. And strange enough, there's a 57-year-old, 15 foot in the air, scraping paint off a ceiling or rotten paint off a ceiling or a little bit of damp. I don't even know what I was doing up there. It's one of these things that needs doing, and you can get a man for that or a woman for that. This is what my wife always said, a man for that. Because your knee is starting to be a bit dodgy. You're 15 foot up in the air and your knee is going. And why are you doing these things? Because sometimes it's because you can. It doesn't mean you should. And it's like, okay, you don't have the money for the man that can and is the best man for it. And I'm only using this word "man" in the lingo sense of the word, in the sense of it's a saying. It's get a man for that. Get the expert for that knows what they're doing. Because you're up a ladder.
The 87-year-old.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a man that's about 85. He's our plumber, and he knows how to do things. And it keeps him alive. He has his double hip operation, double knee operation, a couple of hernias thrown in to boot.
He's Superman.
He's a Superman. He's doing the job, and he's using his 80 years or 60 years plus of experience and knows where to bang and what to twist and get the job done if it's a small job. So he turns up, you ring him, he turns up with a drop of a hat. I rang someone else there, yesterday trying to give them business, and it's not that they're turning you away. You're going, it'll be 2 weeks before they can talk to you. Yeah. And that's even to come to see whether they can or not. And you're going, this needs doing yesterday. If you had the leak, you're going, there's no 2 week of anything. You've got to, so that's where you certainly start doing it yourself and YouTube videoing and get a bit of, gaffer tape or whatever, plug it with something, plug that hole, and stop the damage being done. You need someone there and then, and it's not the insurance company guys, and there's a because it's the same thing. There has to be someone near. There has to be someone you trust. We had loads of our shows in the past. We're talking about these mechanics, these electricians, those accountants that you can trust, and you never change them. But I'm still up a ladder, and you do normally start things yourself and go, I can do it. And until you can't, then you seek out that expert. Or maybe you just don't have the budget and there's no real choice on that. You are the expert and you just have to fucking plug it and be done with it because there is no money for that man.
I know that's the sad thing that life does change. We've been here 28 years, and we've probably the majority of those 28 years had the same mechanic. And unfortunately, last week I went to church and I saw him in the wheelchair, but he can't be the mechanic anymore. And we've had to go and find somebody else that's a lot more expensive, but I think we'll end up staying with them. But you do, I mean, this thing about loyalty, I think, is really, really important, because you build up relationships with people and you begin to trust them, and you know the way they work, and you don't have to overly think and overly constantly be telling people what it is that you want. There's a relationship you build up. It's a long-term prospect that you're doing. But these days, everybody wants you to sort of change it every year and change your electricity, change your water, it's all the same stuff, but there's some other company that's offering a better deal, telephone calls and all those sort of things. And you end up spending all your time sort of running around for somebody else's benefit, not for your benefit. It may be that you're saving a few pounds, but you want someone that you can trust and rely on. And that reliability is a very important thing. That was the way we used to work. It was the way that people relied on me and my capabilities of what I could do as a filmmaker. Didn't always want to pay me, unfortunately, but they knew that I would get the job done, that I would commit myself to doing the job. And something I get very frustrated with at the moment is when somebody has asked me to do something and activated me, and I'm trying to get the job done, and then they say, "Oh, don't bother, it's a waste of time." And I'm sitting there kind of going, "Well, hang on, it wasn't a waste of time that you called me to come in and do this job. I'm now committed to do this job, and now as there seems to be something a little bit difficult, you want to give up." And I'm kind of going, "No, I'm going to fulfill the task. I'm not going to give up. Otherwise, you just give up with everything." And I think that's where we are with the Film Production Academy. It's not that we've never felt like giving up. We've committed to this path that we're on, and we're going to see it through to the very end, because there's nothing else that sort of, we're not being unsettled by what we're doing. We're actually enjoying that process. There are things that come in to try and knock you off track, but thankfully we've been able to keep on going. But we see so many other people around us who are enjoying their jobs, and then something happens and they begin to realize, hang on, the relationship they thought they had is not quite as stable, and they may find that they don't have the job or whatever in the period of time that they were hoping they would do. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to do, is to make sure that we can build something up that's solid, like build the house on a good concrete foundation, and not one that's sandy that kind of starts to tilt over. Don't build it on the side of a cliff when the cliff is kind of eroding. Make sure the ladders are there stable, and you've got your risk assessments all sorted out.
No risk assessments up that ladder. I'm up there, I've a dodgy knee, I've half the tools for the job, or barely a tool for the job. I'm probably the only tool for that job. But I mean, excuse the French and all. But why I was up there was, we have a couple of rooms in the house, and all of a sudden I'm not overly comfortable with people living in my house. And I don't think anybody really is, because you don't know who you're letting in. Is it that wolf at the door, or is it Dracula? Is it you have to invite them in, or you let the wrong one in? As a movie out at the moment, I think it might be an Irish one, I'm not even too sure, but you could let the wrong one in. And now all of a sudden they're in your home, they're living there for a while. So these were students that were going to be taking place or doing a course for the next 9 months. And I was going, I need some money. So there's a give and take. No, I'm uncomfortable with letting the wrong ones in. I don't know who they are. You've got this moment in time whereby there's an opportunity right now. You've got to act on it. There's a limited number looking for somewhere. There's a lot of people maybe offering rooms. Normally there's too many looking and too few rooms. But at the moment, I think it's the other way around. There are different quality rooms. And that's why I was saying to George before this, I was going, I might be asking for a little too much. No, I'm asking for the quality of what I'm offering. I'm not offering the same as everyone else. They're offering a little room, a box room in their house. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're in close confining quarters. There's no distance necessarily in these, for these students to have their own space. Because I know my daughter was, always giving out about this, whereby they're living in the digs with it, and the nanny granny auntie so-and-so is within spitting distance for all one, and in ear distance, and in talking distance. There's no privacy, no escape, no getaway if you want your own space in the house. So I was saying, well, what I'm offering is I've a lot of space. I was going to give them premium. So for a little bit more, you get in terms of money, you get an awful lot more in terms of the worldview of what you're going to get for that 9 months. You're going to be on private grounds and in behind electric gates. You're going to have 1,000 square foot of your own space with students going to your same course. And you've got a lot of distance and inclusion. So, and I know those big 15-foot high, I mean, they're going to take heat. It ain't, I mean, it's a little excess, but you got air and space and distance. And for a few dollars more, that's another film I like. But you can't have it for the same price. If you're running around going, I've got 150 a week instead of 200 a week, you're going to get what you pay for. And it's going to be the minimum, not the maximum. It's going to be close quarters. It's going to be in your face. Yeah. And I'm going, I know later on, they're going to look up that hill and they're going to see what they could have had. And they're going to go, someone else is going to get it. Because what it's done is set me off. And I'm going, I'm getting it ready. I'm priming it. I have to invest in fixing that little bit over there, dress it up and present it, and now be able to turn it on. So I'm going to invest a couple of quid I don't have to be in a position to turn a button to switch this space on at a drop of a hat, to have all utilities going, light, heat, electricity, and like broadband and music, whatever else they want, and their mindset. Because this was about rooms. It was about this is your own personal world and you can be in it and step out of it. And if you're a creative and a crafts person, which these ones are and we are, then it's not I find myself, this is a big room that I'm in. I'll start to drown in a small room because I feel I've grown to the space. That's what they say about sharks. You put them in a fishbowl, they'll grow to the size of a fishbowl. But you don't want to be in a fishbowl. We're in our own personal world. I want my world to be a big world, not a small world. But I want to be able to bring it back in and control it, control your environment. And then from your own environment, step out and in a controlled fashion as opposed to this uncontrollable fashion. But I'm getting that space ready. I don't know who I'll be letting in, but I'm more open to letting others in later. I will be risk assessing them, but I will be saying, this is a Rolls Royce. This ain't no Lada. You're not getting it for your budget. You're getting it for what makes me, comfortable to let go of it. So that's a little bit of why I'm up a ladder, 15 foot in the air, scraping the paint off the walls. Yeah.
But the interesting thing you've been talking about there, which I think is really quite important, is a lot of these youngsters, if they're if they're 18, 19, 20, or whatever, even if they're slightly older, a lot of them would have had their own space, as you say, their own room. Even in the family, most families, they get to a point where the house allows each child to have their own room. So if they have any fights with the rest of the siblings and the rest of the family, they've got somewhere they can go just to be on their own, to chill out, to unwind and whatever. One of the problems, and remembering you're bringing back all these kind of traumas of student life though, from 40, 50 years ago. But I remember having to share rooms with other people. It wasn't me. I didn't want that. That's where I got put. And then you hadn't got your own space. You hadn't got your own space to be you, or at that age to discover who you are. And it's not that, I mean, some people would say, well, it'd be quite lonely, but if you're going out and wanting to spend time, you'll go out and spend time and socialize with other people. You'll get to speak to them. You get to see them, even if it's just in the classroom. You'll form friends and you go out and do stuff. But the thing is that if you are stuck in with somebody else and you actually don't get on well with them, which can happen, you're stuck with that person for however long it is that you're in that place. And usually if it's college, it's for at least a couple of semesters, if it's just for 1 year, until you can find something else. And usually when students in their first year go into halls of residence where they're, I don't know, 4 to a room, very quickly in the second year, they want their own space. They've learned that they need that because mentally they're finding all kinds of problems because the way they're having to deal with people they've never met before who suddenly they're having to live with. And they haven't had a chance to develop that relationship. We were talking about relationships a short time ago. And I think that's an important part. We've gone through COVID, and one of the biggest problems that people are having is that sense of isolation. Now, although, throwing people in to a single room, that can cause all kinds of problems, because if they've felt isolated before, there's a nervousness to wanting to be with other people, especially if they haven't chosen, they've just been forced into that environment. The other thing was you were talking about, and you were saying there's a film coming out, but it's brought me a few interesting ideas. you don't want to open up the doors to people that you don't know, that you haven't researched, because you could be letting in a demon. And I mean, not only in the spiritual sense, but also in the sense of, you know, these narcissistic people and all these
Yeah,
other
I'm going to stop you right there.
crazy.
Sorry, George, I couldn't have crossed you because I'm going to forget otherwise.
This is storytelling stuff, isn't it?
Oh no, and that's
Carry on,
what
yeah.
my boss being the other half, I should give her a bit more of a better weighting in that, because if she's my boss, it's not half. I'm probably I'm probably the 20 of the
There,
80
is it?
20. You know, it's 80-20. That's the boss. I get my list. I'm up a ladder. You
Yeah.
know, that has to be done. I can choose to find budget, get someone else, or I can give it a last jack myself, which I will, because it's the one skill I nearly have, which is painting and decorating. But back to letting the wrong one in. So actually, my other half, Lorraine, went off and looked at these individuals, because you can actually stalk them beforehand and actually look at their Instagrams and go, whoa, possibly a close escape.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of, because what you said was demon, but what I heard was diva. And when I saw these two divas on it, I go, but that's just a persona, and you're out there, and you can't be your normal boring self when you're in Instagram and you're trying to get your viral something, because boring doesn't do it. So it's all false, dress up, present, entertain. Actually, it's our world. But that actually, the strange thing is, when I heard diva, I was also thinking me and you need to be a pair of divas. We need that's for to understand and get back into this viral something, to be seen and to be heard. It's not to be a diva to the person, but to be a diva to the algorithm. You know, so they can
Actually,
not necessarily.
no, I think one of
we saw two divas,
yeah,
and what? So therefore, we have it's the universe or God letting us have a lucky escape. Look what you're nearly invited in,
yeah.
and no amount of money is worth that grief.
And I think that's a really important thing, because what we're starting to find is that the system that we think we're playing to is totally rigged, and it's rigged against us. And there are demons in that, but it's totally rigged against us. And what we're trying to do is to create a safe place where people can unwind and be themselves. But if they're constantly having to put a facade up in front, you know, all the time, then that becomes very wearing for them, and they actually lose so much energy in trying to put up this falseness, which is what it is. Everything is, you know, the number of things I've seen. Even there's a great little animation that showed you the social media trap, where people online were one thing, and as soon as the camera moved away, they were kind of this gray character that wished they were like everybody else. And because they were seeing what they saw with these divas, they were becoming, I can't meet that expectation. And they were getting worn out by trying to follow that expectation. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to give people an opportunity to be themselves, to be who they are, and to actually say, look, you're okay as you are. That's, you know, be real, don't be fake, which is what I think is what we're going. And that's what I found with the photo walks. That's what I found with the guys doing the rosary beads. That's what I'm finding with, you know, that's what I'm finding with people who've just lost someone. They're being real, and they're opening up. They're vulnerable. They're in a kind of a sticky situation that they've never been in before. And we've seen that even with people, not that they've lost something, but they've not lost somebody, but they've lost something about themselves, that they feel sort of isolated. I know we're talking about getting people into single rooms, but basically they found themselves lost, and the world around them is crammed in, and expectations are so great for them that they're basically just getting burnout. And what we're doing is saying that there's a safe space for you to have your own room, but then you could socialize with us until you get to that point where you can't, and you've got somewhere to go safe where you feel comfortable. We want to create these safe environments where people are learning about filmmaking, but it's not so much the filmmaking, it's learning about relationships. Again, we're back to that relationship thing. So that, you know, and especially if quite often people don't feel that they're competent enough to do things, and they feel, well, you know, maybe I'm just pushing beyond my possibilities. And we're saying, no, you've got some lovely ideas, go with it, let's see what happens. And those things are where people suddenly get, oh wow, that's very interesting, didn't realize you could do that, that's fantastic. So they're underselling themselves, and it's not about selling themselves. They're just putting themselves down unnaturally because they've lost their own confidence in who they actually are. And that's what our society seems to be doing. It's all these kind of hierarchies that are basically structured where certain people in certain positions feel that they can treat others like nothing, and they have no respect. Whereas I think if you show respect to everybody around you, they want to be with you. You actually then attract them, and they want to be with you because you're showing something that they haven't got, but they would love to have, and you can actually nurture them and build them up so they can feel that there's something a little bit more special than what the world is currently trying to do with people.
There's the thing. It's back to, letting, that's my problem. I'm saying, I don't know who I'm letting in. What we have is this forced timeline, and even for these individuals, they have to start college by next Monday. But they're only told this Monday. And they got to find somewhere to live in this short time span, and maybe they have a budget. But they've got to find somewhere, regardless of their budget, because if they don't find, they got to start Monday. They have to already be here. So there's this forced timeline, and people putting an undue pressure, and then there's a shortage possibly of supply. Maybe there might be, enough places in terms of accommodation, but you don't. You're trying to grab one as opposed to rank them. So what we found maybe with these individuals was maybe they said, asked everybody, and then got to be in a position to start to rank them and pick one that suited them, which is great. But if everybody's doing that, if there's 10 people looking in 10 and 11 places, and we're possibly the 11th, then you're going, how are they being ranked? Those 10 will end up in those 10, but I'm sure they're not all equal. I'm sure, number one, based on cost, I know this woman was, nearly half what we were saying in terms of price. And we're going, is she off her head? I mean, she barely get the electricity, but she might like the company. Maybe she's okay with that. Maybe she's giving back to students. Some of these students are very well to do. Some may not be. But if ever she says she's getting inundated with calls and everyone's, well, obviously the ranking she was the lowest price.
Yeah.
So immediately, if she's the lowest price, but she's also amenable and it's a nice space, and maybe all that is there as well, then all those students will prioritize her first, and then she's got the pick of the bunch. Then she needs to rank them backwards and get them to pitch and all the rest. But there's a little bit of something else going on. People are telling us we want it. They haven't seen it. We haven't met them. They haven't met us. We haven't told them the price. You're going, that was the panic need of it. Yeah. They have to have somewhere to live by Monday. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. They'll put up and shut up and turn up. And then they might move afterwards if they can find something else. But we're still in the position where I wasn't comfortable with letting anyone in. Then it took me a few days going, well, if I was to let someone in, it's at this price, but for this amount of people. It's not 2, it's 4. Because what we have to offer is a 4-bedroom place. So it's not going to be put 2 into it and give them, 4 luxury. It's no, we need 4 or we can't do it.
Yeah.
So it's not 3 even, because 3 makes it work, it makes it break even, it pays electricity. We might make a few quid, but the 4th one is the cream. Well, if the 4th one is not there, the whole thing doesn't work. So it's the same with people out there in break even. You're not going into business for break even, because that just means you spent it and you got it back. You didn't make it. You're hoping to get the break even and then to cream. But if you're making the break even and you never get beyond it, you're going, what's the point? Don't do anything. Or most people are aspiring to break even. And what it is 94% of indie films don't break even. Someone paid, someone lost, it cost somebody. So I'm going, I'm not giving up part of my mind space and my personal space for no cream.
Yeah.
And people have to realize it is cream.
And the other thing is
they can tell it's cream.
Yeah, and that's not being selfish, because there's a certain attitude that some people, you're being selfish about that, and kind of go, because you just want. And you kind of go, no. Economically, it's not viable unless certain criteria are actually met. And only then, and again, it's like I was, we discussed rosary bead costs, and people kind of go, they're just a £5, that's all I want to pay. Well, then it's not viable. There's no, don't do it. If you just want to make money, then don't do it. There's no point in doing it, because all you're going to be doing is getting yourself into a situation where someone has a big demand for a whole load, and you're suddenly finding you're eating up all your hours trying to supply that and not getting anything back. In fact, out of money, making losses, because people's expectations are kind of silly. We've seen over the last 20 years, normal everyday costs going up. I mean, I remember sort of 15, 20 years ago, if I wanted to fill up my oil tank, it would cost about 65 quid. Now it's around about 650 quid. It's gone up by tenfold or whatever, 1,000%. Actually, I think that's what that is, isn't it? But nobody's salary's gone up. In fact, what most people are finding is that their salaries are going slightly down. They're shifting in the other direction. They're not making ends meet in what they're trying to do. And when you try to explain to people, especially youngsters like students, and these, you were talking about students wanting to come in, they're not thinking about how they can afford to do stuff. And I remember HND students trying to work out, well, if you wanted to live and make a living doing video, what would you need to charge? And most of them are sort of coming up with these kind of silly figures. And I said, well, okay, let's look at the economics, the real economics of what we're talking about here. And I went through what do they need to feed themselves? What do they need to clothe themselves? What do they need to rent? And what do they need to, you know, do all the normal things of going out and providing clothes and socializing. And it worked out at £32,000. Now we're talking about 14 years ago. A student coming out of college who wanted a bedroom to be able to live for a year needed 32,000. And you're sitting there kind of going, that seems, you know, that's a lot of money to be able to just, but that's what the maths was actually saying. You need £32,000 to do what you normally would do. Otherwise, you're going to live a horrible life.
I like what you're saying. Like,
yeah.
Sorry for coming across you there now.
Yeah.
It's just going, it's what I heard was you got to do the maths beforehand. You know, stop running into decisions. As I said, that was what we did, myself, my partner, my wife, because we have empty rooms. Now it says, yeah, that's by design. They're there, but it's not the job is not to fill them, you know, for the sake at any cost. They're there, it's excess for us.
Yeah.
But there's opportunity in it. Strange thing is, if I put these people in, it would give me a short-term gain or some equivalent of them that at this price point. It would take away a certain pain, give me enough cream so I can do what the job we're talking about with the Film Production Academy. But the strange thing is, it would also potentially change the timelines on that to be those rooms aren't available anymore. So therefore, you can't include them in your plan for when you're selling your room. So you might have to find some other ones somewhere else, or maybe they were the ones for the crew, or maybe with more people coming than we thought. And now the excess is gone. You're now in a scarcity mindset. So I like to have excess, not scarcity. And that's just in my surroundings. I want to have a full tank of petrol, not on the red, and be going, hope to God I get there. I want to have excess for the distance. I want to have enough couple of quid in my pocket to buy the extra coffee and not go, will I be able to pay, you know, this week's rent? So it's people are not meant. I found myself in the number of years, like for the last number of years, in a scarcity mindset. And I was only talking this to George the other day, going, you know, we will buy this when we save that couple of quid to get that piece of equipment, and then we'll have it. Whereas that's a scarcity mindset going, well, actually, if we think we're going to be successful, then we already have the money. We might as well get it now and actually use it, because we need it and we want it, and therefore just get it. And the goal is to have it earlier and be using it, because it's the very tool you want and need. It's not wait until we can afford it, because that may never come. And that's what happened with my cars, with houses, with moving out of home. Most people aren't ready to make the jump when it's the proper time to do it. You got to change jobs. You got to take a gamble. You got to move out and stop renting and start buying, because until the time you do, that money is always a landlord's. That you're paying down, giving him equity, not yourself. So at the earliest stage you can ever do and make the jump, I've heard about 5-year plans and 10-year plans to get to success. You're going, what's in the plan? What's it say at the end? You're going, you got to cut that down to next month, 6 months away. You stop making a plan for 10 years into the future. It's, you know, an awful lot of people I came across are planning for their pension at a very young age, which is grand if you have excess. But if you're in a scarcity at the moment, stop planning for your pension. You're not living now. You're turning into an old person now, and meek and scarce and trying to make stuff last. No, you're not doing the wrong thing, depending on what you're doing, but rather you need to find something else that gives you cream. You got to find that second passive income, or third or first, and not an extra hour of a job of minimum wage that barely changes the scenario, just uses up that extra hour. You got to do the gamble hour, the investment hour, the risk hour that gives you a 10x or 5x return when it does kick in. I was saying that to my son only lately. He's going to go to college now next week. He has his part-time job. He's dropping some of it because he'll be in college. So he's already seen he's less couple of quid down, but needs to maybe have drinking money to go out with the lads. So therefore he needs to find this money somewhere else in this now more limited time, because he'd be working, studying, and this, but it's out there. He's starting to, his mind is opening to, what do I need to be doing? I need to be looking at something different, not what I'm currently doing. That did for pocket money, but not to buy a car, not to pay insurance, not to have excess or cream.
Yeah.
We got to move away from scarcity. We got to seek out cream.
And I think the other thing is that something that sort of came across my mind over the last couple of weeks, because I mean, I know I'm involved in lots of different things. And the problem is that each one of those things demands your time, but they don't demand the time that you're specifically giving. They demand extra time. And that's that. And all the way through my career, I've seen that whenever somebody budgets for something, they still haven't budgeted properly, and they're actually really asking for double the amount. And the reason why I stopped doing some of the things was because their expectation was that I would pay for it in my time. And
they're curdling the cream, George.
Yeah, well, they could. Yeah, well, but the thing is that one of the problems I think that a lot of people are having is that most jobs, they were talking about. I was watching. There's a guy from Google who was recently been let go, and whereas Google's idea was to give people that flexibility so that they become more inspirational. His was, you've got to graft really, really hard. You've got to work hard. And his idea was to send people into the basement who got PhDs. So they spent all these years getting to a PhD, and then they're going to go into the basement to try and work multiple hours. And you kind of going, who are they living for? They're just becoming slaves to a system. And it's not that I don't think you should work hard, because I love what we're doing. I enjoy the work I'm doing. Otherwise, there's no point in doing it. But I know that if we're committed to something and we see it through, there has to be a sort of long-term-ish plan, God willing, because at the end of the day, you've got to provide for your family. You've got to provide. So it's not just being selfish. It's not just for us. It's to make sure that the group that you're with, your family, the base thing, has sufficient funds to provide their needs. And the way things are going that I've seen in the news recently is in the UK, they're going to start means testing pensions, but everybody has worked and paid in for the pensions.
That's what really, really annoys me. It's the retro fit.
Yeah.
Or fake. I think it's right. You can't change terms and conditions retrospectively. And
Yes.
That's what's going on. Though all those individuals were promised in the past, if you did what you did and you already contributed, you've done your hours and put in the time, and you've done your 40 years of something, then at the age 65 or 67, you will get X, which is the social media, or not social media, social, welfare type pension. But I said, now, as I said, and you'll get your medical, and you'll get a little bit of this and a little bit of the other. But now, and pensions, you gave businesses the right to invest in pensions. And what I hate about England at the moment is buy to let. They're telling the investors to make long-term planning decisions and buying buildings and buy to lets or getting mortgages on it or investment funds and their cream is stacked at the end.
Yeah.
Not people think that landlords are making money in the month in question. They're not.
No.
They might have a £500,000 mortgage. They might be paying the bank 7%. They're paying taxes of 50% on something different if they're not in a trust. And but most people are in this middle ground of the mama, papa one. I've one property or maybe two. If I'm well off and doing a great job, that I can, if I eke along and have my own, they're trying to create their own pension beyond the social welfare level of means tested survival. Because their bills would have been a bigger bill, and their lifestyle would have been a bigger lifestyle, and their house might need a bigger maintenance. But they're trying to live when they stop working, and they're willing to work to live later in terms of invest and take these other risks. But the likes of the English government at the moment are now going after your inheritances, your capital gains, your investments, your one or two properties for the little man. I know it'll affect the big man. Actually, the big man will just move. He'll just change structures and it won't affect them. So it'll hit the middle person more, to take more from them after promising them and incentivizing them to get into a certain different games, from pension to be landlords to other people, to then go, well, now that you've done all this, we'll take away the cream. Because you're going to have to manage it for the government. It's the government's job to provide social housing and social means through taxes and incentivizing businesses and people and employment, in order to get those taxes to give back. But you can't double take and actually triple take. You're going, you did it all. Let's take it from your kids. Let's take it from your inheritances. Let's minimize the upside. Even though every figure that was there was already after tax to begin with, to be invested in, and took tax all along the journey of it going up or down if it was a property. It's ridiculous what's going on in England now with the new Labour government. And the Irish one wants to do something similar a little later on.
Well, I think all the governments around the world are going to try and do the same kind of thing, because
they're becoming socialists.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, it's a redistribution of the wealth, but not of the pain and not of the workload. It's give to those that have earn to those an awful lot that haven't worked. From those, and take it from those that you made false promises to in the past, that now you're reneging. You can't have it both ways.
Well, the thing is that what's happening is that, I mean, most people, most human beings, all they want to do is survive. They want to get by. They want to have some place where they feel secure, that meets all their needs so they can feed their family. They've got enough income to come in to buy or rent or have a place to live. Do you know what I mean? And to heat it, to make sure everybody gets fed, so nobody actually is dying of starvation. But the way that the systems seem to be going, more and more people are being pushed into homelessness because they can't buy a house, they can't rent a house. And if they do rent a house, then most of their income's disappearing on paying this massive, and the rents keep going up and up and up. I mean, I know people who were renting for a period of time, and all the time they were constantly being threatened that they could get more money if and some of those people had invested in their home because they thought it was a long-term stay, and ended up finding that they'd put loads of money into the house and then had got evicted. So they couldn't. And so, there's big problems. I know my brother in Canada with his partner, they're renting because they can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to buy anything, even though at one point he did have a flat in London. But the flat in London, the cost of actually, because it was part of the flat association, they were having to pay more and more money into that for the maintenance. So he was making no money out of that either. It became a false economy. And that's what we've been talking about all the way through, is how to get people to understand the economies of what they're doing, which is why in our film presentation, the way we're working things, we're trying to make sure that we know how much it costs, so that when we do get the people there, we know that what everything costs to do. So we're not being hit by a sudden, oh, we didn't expect that bill, and then all of a sudden that destroys the potential of what we're doing. Because that's what we've experienced. You've experienced that, Garvin, with some of the films that you've worked on, where they started shooting before they actually had the funds ready, and then run out of funds because they were spending on silly things, and then trying to work out how they can get extra money. And
there's two extremes there, George, in the sense of an awful lot of the mentor type stuff out there and the motivational stuff is maybe it says start before you're ready. And you learn as you go. No, that's a different machine if it's you. But if you're starting to, there's 20 people on set and they're being given false impressions as to, they're bringing their A game there. They've turned down something else. They're under the false illusion that there's a budget there. That's a whole other animal. But, in the sense, if everyone knows and everyone's informed, that's fine. Then you might see the reward is in the later game. And they can bring their time. But there's no matter what the industry, you do need to, I know we maybe should have started earlier. It's like, it's start and then iterate and then pivot. It's not start and go that fail and stop. It's the Americans are great in terms of they nearly have a badge of honor on failure. Look, I lost this, I went bankrupt 15 times and I did it again. That did it again. But it's not, they're fine, but we don't know the damage trail of administration and bankruptcy in terms of who they didn't pay and what damage did they do each time they made a jump, and they finally got it right. But I don't see them running back and paying all the yesterday bills of who they fecked up in the meantime. Someone, for anything to be bankrupt, including themselves, that means they cannot afford to pay their bills. And those bills are normally belong to someone else's income. And therefore, the ripple effect is don't, jump before you're ready if you're going to leave a damaged trail. It's more try new things and start learning before and like growing, but not at the cost of others, if that makes sense.
Well, that makes perfect sense. And the reason being is that I've experienced in the past what I would have classed as trailblazers. And you see these people running off, burning their way forwards, and they're leaving so much debris behind them that other people have to pick up to try and make them to work. And they've initiated things that basically aren't sustainable. And so, as you say, all the other people behind end up losing out. They end up sort of being crushed because what their expectations are never going to be met. But one of the things that we've been doing is, I believe that we're where we are now because we've been fairly thorough about the process, because we don't want to lose our homes. That's the one thing. We've spent a lot of time building those up. You want that security. It's not for security for me and you, it's the security for our families and the people that live with us, because there's a sense of trust in what we're trying to do. So you've got to build the foundations that you've got to do. You've got to make sure are solid. And we've been working on how to make sure that what we're doing is fairly solid. And we've gone through numerous iterations, tested, and because we've tested them, we could see where they were going to fail before they failed. So we knew that not to implement those things because they would be very destructive. I mean, the film courses, as in the master's degrees and whatever, the cost of those to get them up and running, you needed to have a massive, great big income, and there's no guarantee you were going to get that. So that prohibited us in going that direction. We still done enough to make sure that we knew and understand. And at some point, if what we're doing, a university comes along and says, actually, we'd like to do that, we could say, well, here you go. That is a cost we can actually recoup from that. But we've gone through a process that has allowed us to see that the best way forward is through experiential holidays in filmmaking, which becomes like a film therapy as opposed to art therapy process, because our focus is on the people that come to give them an experience. And to give them the best experience, you've got to have a film to make. Otherwise, they're going to sit around and kind of, what are we going to do today? Oh, we've got a camera. They go out and shoot. And I've had this for students, deliberately did this for students, to show them the need to plan. Without a script, they ran around doing all sorts of things. They enjoyed the very first day. And then when they went out the second day, they got bored because they didn't know what to do. And that's what we're doing. We've created the what to do so that when people come, it's not that they're figuring out how to use this gear. They're basically have a project to work on, and they have certain set timelines, and it's a fairly well-structured event. And that's, for all events, that's what you get to do, whether it's a film, whether it's someone doing a concert somewhere, all those things. There's the management of those events to cut down the risk, depending on the number of people, is so important. So it's not that we're being risk averse. What we're doing is we're making sure that we understand all the risks and all the potentials and can minimize those to make sure people enjoy the process they're going through. But those very elements are things that most people need to start to understand for life, because they're life skills that we're actually encouraging people to think. Because you were talking at the very beginning of the show there that there were people making panic decisions because they hadn't got somewhere to live, and all of a sudden their time to go to college was coming and they had nowhere to stay. So they weren't really assessing where they were going. They've still made decisions based on price, not on what that price actually gives them. You mentioned that lady was suddenly being overloaded with people requesting because they were stamping up what was a minimal amount of opportunities. She may not be able to make the money through what she's doing, or if she is, she may be funded somewhere else.
Strange enough, she is. I've done the maths afterwards. She got two of them, and therefore the two made sense at that, and she's happy. She's happy at that level of operation. But what she's offering is 2 box rooms in a small house, which is grand. What I was offering was 4, 1,000 square foot of 4 rooms, living room, dining room, and their own. So it wasn't a comparable offer.
No,
I couldn't take what would be perfectly okay for her would cost me in the end.
But one of the things I've seen in my experience work-wise is that people undercut others constantly. They were constantly undercutting. but it got to the point where if you undercut too much, you couldn't possibly run the business, because if you undercut everybody else, then you're not delivering quality. You're just delivering the cheapest, and even you may not even be able to afford that yourself.
Yeah, actually, what's interesting is, they were panicking, and
Yeah.
what happened was we keep on doing it. We're reacting to others, and you go into the same. Oh, it becomes the conversation, and the urgency, and their urgency is not our urgency, unless.
No.
But they were making it our urgency, and all of a sudden I'm up a ladder. I'm ordering stuff and getting a man that can and prepping and spending money on someone I don't even know, that it turns out they're looking at 10 others. We were reacting.
Yes.
2 days beforehand, we had a nice little empty couple of rooms. It was on my plan to do later on when I find the budget. All of a sudden, someone else's urgency puts us into panic mode to then become ready before we are ready, and throw money away and to try and get it ready to give them the best experience, and then to possibly be competing on cost and drop the price because that's their budget. I'm going, that's not our budget, that's their budget. And we keep on making this mistake in this household many and many a time. People want to rent our property because they have a rent, or they're actually, a call came yesterday for someone's building a house, they have to be in somewhere for 2 months, and oh, we know you've somewhere, and I go, that's not you didn't exist a minute ago. We don't know who you are. You've got a budget, you've got a timeline, you're trying to make yours ours. But you're not giving us any cream. You're not offering any cream. You're giving us an urgency to supply and provide what you need, where there's no negotiation. It's, here's the figure, and you have to bring your price down to that, and you have to supply us. And go, sorry, I didn't take that. We don't need to take the phone call. We'd love to help. Actually, we can't help because that's not our product. We're not selling short-term rent. We're selling retreats. And if we take your panic away, we've destroyed our own business model. We took away our cream in the future because you have an urgency. So we'd like to help.
You've created a debt in the present, and not in and also another one in the future.
The only reason you'd actually swap your own plans out if someone's offering you more cream.
Yeah.
Not their urgency, lack of budget, and their panic, and now we've to mirror it.
Yeah. Well, we found there was a situation with a relative who had a house that needed to be rented out, and they thought they'd done the due diligence to check who these people were, and then suddenly found after a while that the person had a tanker, oil tanker lorry going in and out, had knocked down walls in the neighboring thing to get access through a field, and suddenly they were laundering diesel. And you suddenly went, oh my goodness, what the hell's going on? So, but it created an additional cost once you got them out, because we then had to fix the wall. They had to fix the wall of the neighboring farmer, and that was an additional cost on top of losing whatever they'd lost as well. So again, it's back to this, you've got to
fools rush in. That's why I'm at the here.
Fools rush in where angels fear to go. And I think that's this thing about and I think where the wisdom that we should have, being slightly older, is that we don't rush in because other people want to get us panicked, because we know that's going to lead to, I see that all the time. People start to panic, and you kind of go, hang on, just simmer down, because you're actually ending up not going to get the job done. You're wasting everybody else's time, because you're also panicking other people who won't then think straight, and they'll make decisions that are bad decisions because they haven't had the full picture. We've got to have the full picture.
The fear was of losing the money. That's what keeps on overriding. It's like, no, we've nothing. That conversation comes around again. Look, we lost that because we were a different price, and we could have 9 months of something. We could have had 9 months of the wrong thing at the minimum cost with the maximum risk, as opposed to you lost the opportunity. You didn't actually lose the opportunity. That was too panicked, too forced, too reactive, and not in control. You need to recognize what you want when it's presenting itself, and not to keep on taking the first. We're working from a scarcity mindset again. If you have nothing, anything will do. Where actually, if you get that anything, you've just undone your future.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's really important. And that's actually, it's the same decision making in every aspect of life, even if it's buying a car, because you could end up buying something you think is meant to be good, but it doesn't achieve all the things you were led to believe.
It's
And
a
that,
lemon. I have one of those outside, parked
yeah,
outside.
well, again, that's what they call them, isn't it? You bought a lemon. But
Yeah.
I think this sense of being panicked into to doing action is never a good thing, because you'll always make the wrong mistakes. And in fact, everything I'm reading is talking about the same kind of stories at the moment. People are constantly making decisions because they're seeing something, they're getting panicked, they're feeling uncomfortable, and because they feel uncomfortable, they rush into something that in the end is more uncomfortable for them because they've lost out the potential. Whereas if they'd stood fast, that steadfastness, and carried on going, they would have been better off in the long run. And I think that's something that, we're trying to do what we're doing in the long run. We will benefit from this if we just keep steadfast and be honest. There's an honesty about it. That's what other people aren't being. They're being deceptive, and even the way they approach it, even like the email things and all those other things. There's a deception that's constantly there, and now we're getting to the point where you're getting AI suddenly coming in, and they're talking. I mean, a lot of these job places, recruitment agencies are now starting to encourage companies to take AI over humans. And that would be a big problem. But it's also, if you go back to the economic system, if you don't have jobs for humans, how are the humans going to start to make money? And it's not that they should expect it, but if you prevent them from having the capability of even setting up their own business or starting things going or collectively joining, you're going to have all kinds of problems. And it takes time to get there, which is where, we don't have problems, but we have things that we can see if we build in the right way, they all produce opportunities at a later date. If you rush into something, as you've said, Garvin, there, you lose the opportunity that you thought you might have had, and you may have created, all kinds of other problems for yourself just because you've rushed in and haven't figured it out straight away. So that scarcity thing, I think most people are being driven into that scarcity way of working, forced to do things that it is leaving them being uncomfortable constantly and never actually getting anything in the long term. So the patience, I think, is a really important thing. And that's something I think we've gained from this discussion, is that really if we're patient and we methodically work things through, like you do as an accountant with the economics of things, what I'm doing as well, you suddenly realize what's viable, what's not viable, and you can make an educated guess of how to move forward that's based on evidence, not based on emotions and based on assumptions because somebody else is panicking you.
That's it. Be proactive, not reactive, and
Yes.
be, not the scarcity mindset. It's the abundance mindset. So therefore, be proactive in an abundant mindset. You go, do the right thing, know what it is, plan for it, package for it, pitch to it, identify the customers, know who they are, where they are, and the fact that they will value what it is you're doing for them or selling to them or the experience. And that's it. I heard, I know ours is going to be a certain cost, and that cost will be a small figure to certain people that have, bigger, monetary amounts in terms of earning capabilities and their wealth, and it'll be a massive figure to those that have scarcity. But in terms of what we're delivering, we're delivering a value experience at this cost. We cannot drop the cost without dropping the value, and that value is the experience. Yeah. This is what it costs. We're investing in the experience to deliver the value at this cost. And but what we're doing is we're grouping the cost. If there's 8 people there and we're grouped their fees together, then we're investing that back in them, in the experience, and getting what we want out of it. And that's, everyone gets to enjoy it, but it cannot be at little scarce cost. You cannot have that experience. You'll have something, but will it be worth it? Why bother? No, what we're saying is save up for the figure and get the Disneyland. You don't want I can't believe it's not Disney. That's what you'll get if you pay for it. We're not, I can't believe we're not Disney. we're going full Mickey Mouse here and Goofy. You know, you're not going to get that for Weetabix tokens. Yeah.
No, and I think that's important. I mean, again, it's we're becoming more clear in what we're providing, and we are providing a film experience that is like arts therapy. It's film therapy because we're providing people with that opportunity to switch off from other things, to have an activity that keeps them busy all the way through. They get a chance to talk to other people, and one of the things is encouraging people to chat. I mean, even with the film walkabout that I was on recently, although I'd initially organized the first one, I made it my responsibility to go around and chat to everybody and see who they were and try and, you know, encourage them to talk about what they were doing. So and seeing that was an important part of the contribution that they could actually make. And that's something that I think is really important with what we're doing, is that each person, there's 8 additional people on top of us and the actors have all got expectations, and we want to talk to them to find out, give them agency is what we're trying to do. And through their participation in the film, because they will get a chance to do camera, they'll get a chance to do clapperboard, we give them agency, we give them something to do, and we're asking them to be honest about the activities they're doing, because that has an impact on what goes on in the process we're doing. And through that, they'll have an experience that will last a lifetime. It'll encourage them to think about not only if they want to be filmmakers, but what do they do if they want to be a carpenter, or they want to be, a builder, or make pens, or make lenses, or whatever they want to do. There's a process that's the same for every single activity. And once you break it down into its component parts, you can then start to see what's viable and what's not viable, and whether you're wasting your time. And also, so you're not wasting other people's time. That sales pitch, as we were talking, it was reminding me of how people do sales pitches, and they basically make people feel uncomfortable because they're forcing them into buying. I remember doing
fear of FOMO, fear of missing out. Or
fear of missing out. Yeah, there's that constant, if you don't do it now, you'll lose it. And you kind of go, well, I didn't have it in the first place, so how am I going to lose it? You know, I did insurance for a short period of time back in the 90s, and I only did the 2 weeks training. And what I didn't like was when I was talking to other people about the script they got you to do, was they felt uncomfortable, and they were kind of going, do I really have to buy this? Because I feel I'm being trapped. And I went, no, I don't like that. I don't want to entrap someone into feeling that they have to do something, because you're depowering them. And what we want to do is the opposite. We want to empower people to feel that they do have agency in what they're doing. They can, their thoughts, their way of thinking is respectful. You know, we respect them for who they are, and that's important.
Retreat from their own world into our world.
That's
into
it.
a new world, a world that doesn't exist.
New world
we'll make exist. But I mean, that's it. It's when you're talking about empowering yourself and investing, that's it. It's investing in yourself. What we will be offering is this retreat away. We touched on, this is my world, this is my personal space. You know, whatever's going on out there, you can leave it out there. You can come in, but you've got to invest in yourself and invest in this escape, and leave your baggage behind and come in. And, you know, we have things planned for you. That's what you're saying. We talk about plans and goals. My family did, and my young lad and my daughter, they don't know what to do in college. You know, one of them, and that was because they don't know what the longer term game is, and we don't even understand that. But they're not in school. You know, you're picking from doctor to painter. And in the same application process, that makes no sense, because we don't know what any of them are. We don't know what we're meant to be. And there's very few people. I know I had a conversation with another mate of mine. In the good old days when I went to school and was going to go to college, if you got your 600 points, you did medicine or veterinary or something that was a profession. And it was money. It wasn't about empathy. It was the most points that nearly dictated the scarcity of the spaces given the amount of money you were capable of earning if you went into that profession. But that was before all these other new jobs 40 years later. There was professions and trades and factories, possibly back then. And therefore you were going from minimum wage to somewhere in between to you blessed yourself when you we're in front of the doctor or the barrister or whatever it was. It was the professionals, but it was not necessarily what you should be, what you wanted to be, or what, that's what these days are about. I still don't know what I want to be, what I should be, or what I can be based on not trying new stuff.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that popped up as you were talking. One was the photograph in my head of my grandson who went to school yesterday for the first day, and he's like 5. And what do you want to be? I want to be a policeman when I grow up. And you kind of go, hang on, that's so. If you're fixed into that way of thinking right from a 5-year-old, you're never going to experience the possibilities of what's out there. And most people get trapped by the time they're 16. Well, you're good at this, do that. And you kind of go, you're being asked at a very young age to carve a path that you have no knowledge about, but you're missing all these other things because you haven't had a chance to experience what's going on there. But I think that's kind of a frustrating thing that's going on. The reason to go to college is to learn of possibilities. So it's not that you should need to, I think a degree in a HND and a master's degree should be a more generalized thing that gives you experiences, because anybody with a degree can go off and do anything else usually. But to force people to go off and get multiple degrees is basically because somebody in a system is overselling those ideas, and people don't get the money back from that. And that's one of the difficulties, is they're being forced into.
And hence why we're not selling degrees anymore, and why we're selling holidays.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things that was coming out was this idea. You were talking about the way the world's gone, and the way the world's gone is it's packing lots of people into offices to do quite often meaningless things in front of computers to be so-called productive. They're forced to work 8 hours in front of the computer, and they have to go to office, even though nowadays we could be working remotely. But it's because it's because the bosses don't trust the people to do what they're doing, and they feel they have to have them in front. So they're micromanaging. And I think that's something that's awful. One of the problems that youngsters are having nowadays is they've lost the art of building relationships. And how do you build a relationship with somebody else? So part of what we're doing is about building those relationships. We've spent 5 years, actually we're probably coming up to 6 years, building the relationship that we've got to know how each other works, which allows us to suddenly kind of go, right, now I can trust Garvin to do this. I don't need to worry about that.
It took 5 years to trust me to do this, whatever this is. It's a long game. It's not a short game.
And I think that's important. It is a long game. Well, you think about, marriages are long game things as well. They have to build up, trust and respect that other people. In a partnership, it's about what is it that you're going to do and what you're going to get out of that between the two people that are going on. And through that, building that relationship, like, that I'll do certain tasks, I know you'll do that. I don't need to worry about that. I can focus on the task that I'm good at and make sure that happens. And as we get further in, we know there'll be other people that we're building relationships. We can rely on them to do their job, because, and it takes away all the things having to do everything. We're already starting to work out what jobs need to be done and how we can gradually build this up. But there's no point getting there straight away. We know it's there in the future. But it can only be there in the future if we do what we need to do now and get those things done and work on those. And it takes whatever time it takes to get those things done. If we rush into it, like I'm seeing other companies, they end up with people who the system isn't set up properly. They don't have the management structure, and they're then putting bandages over bandages over bandages over bandages that basically collapse at some point over the weight of the bandages, which they didn't need in the first place if they figured the thing out in the first. Those are the things that we're seeing. Unfortunately, we are coming to the end because I've got to go and pick my mum up. So we're going to bring it.
I got to get back up a ladder.
You've got to go back up a ladder. But I think the important message of what this show is really all about is building relationships, solid relationships, and don't jump into relationships too quickly. Garvin, you've mentioned in the past when people have rung you up, they're ringing you up to talk to you as though they've had a relationship with you for the last 30 years. And you're saying, whoa, hang on, mate. I don't know you from Adam. I don't know anything about you. You're asking the wrong questions. Start to build up a relationship. Spend time with me so that we can become comfortable with each other's company and know where we're going with things and know that you're not going to sabotage my life, which is what most of this is all about, really. And most of the things that we panic about is someone's going to come in and sabotage our life, which is what the beginning of this show was about. If we let them in, they could have actually sabotaged. It may have sounded like a golden egg, but it could have actually been something quite rotten that's coming in and smelt the place out.
So hence the saying, only fools rush in.
Where angels fear to tread.
That's it.
Thanks, everybody. If you like the show, why not subscribe and like and do all the other things that they ask you to do? We don't care if you don't, but that's all right, because we're enjoying the conversation and we hope you do too. Thanks very much. There's the bell.
Bye for now.
Bye.